Detroit, Michigan, 1964. A 14-year-old girl is standing in a garage, holding a bass guitar that is almost as tall as she is. Her father just handed it to her, a 1957 Fender Precision, sunburst finish, gold scratch plate, a stripe running down the neck. It weighs nearly as much as she does. She does not know it yet, but she will still be playing this exact instrument 60 years from now. Her name is Suzi Quatro. She will become the first female musician to front a rock band as the lead singer and bass player. She will sell 55 million records. She will have 2 #1 hits in the United Kingdom before she turns 24. Joan Jett will put her poster on the bedroom wall. Lita Ford will say she heard all that thunder coming out of this little girl. Chrissie Hynde will name her as a defining influence, and her own country, the United States of America, will act as though she barely existed. If you are new here, this is She Burned Bright, where we tell the stories of women who changed rock history. Not the polished version, the real one. Subscribe because every name we say here earned the right to be remembered. She grew up in Grosse Pointe, a quiet suburb just outside Detroit. Her father, Art Quatro, played keyboards in a jazz trio at night and worked a regular job during the day. Music was not a hobby in the Quatro household. It was the air they breathed. Suzi made her stage debut before she was 10 years old, playing bongos with her father's band. She studied classical piano and percussion. She was serious about music before she was serious about anything else. In 1964, everything changed. The Beatles appeared on The Ed Sullivan Show, and like millions of other American teenagers, the Quatro sisters watched and felt something crack open inside them. Suzi's older sister Patty decided they were going to start a band, an all-girl band right there in Detroit. They called themselves the Pleasure Seekers, a name they pulled from a dictionary after looking up the word hedonist. They needed a bass player. Suzi was 14. She was told, not asked, that she would be playing bass. The instrument was enormous. It was almost as tall as she was, and she could barely get her arms around it. She took it home and she learned. Within weeks, she was not just playing, she was singing lead. The girl with the bass became the girl out front. The Pleasure Seekers played the Detroit club circuit for years. They were good. They were loud. They were 5 girls in a town full of all-male bands, and they held their own. They played Motown venues, military bases, even went to Vietnam to perform for the troops. But the glass ceiling in Detroit was low and hard. No one in the American music industry knew what to do with an all-female rock band in the late 1960s. Bookers did not take them seriously. Record labels did not return their calls. The world simply was not ready. The band changed its name to Cradle and kept pushing. And then, in 1971, something happened that changed everything. A British producer named Mickie Most, the man behind hits for The Animals, Herman's Hermits, Donovan, came to see Cradle play. He was not interested in the band. He was interested in the girl with the bass. He offered Suzi a solo deal. There was one condition. She would have to move to England. She was 21 years old. She had never lived outside Michigan. She packed a bag and flew to London alone. Think about that for a moment. A young woman from a Detroit suburb, leaving behind her family, her band, her entire life, to move to a country she had never been to, because her own country refused to hear her. London heard her immediately. The first 2 years were hard. She was living in a foreign country, alone, far from everything she knew, recording demos that went nowhere. But Mickie Most believed in her, and he paired her with songwriters Nicky Chinn and Mike Chapman. the hit-making duo behind the Sweet and Mud. Together, they found a sound that was raw, driving, and completely Suzi's own. She wore black leather head to toe, not as a costume, not as a marketing decision, but because that was who she was. She played bass with her legs planted wide and her chin up. She was 5'3" and 100 pounds, and she looked like she could tear a stage apart with her bare hands. There was nothing decorative about her. There was nothing soft. She was not the girl singer standing at the microphone while the boys played behind her. She was the band. She was the front line. She was the leader, the voice, the engine. Nobody in rock and roll had ever seen a woman do this before. There had been girl groups. There had been female singers backed by male musicians, but there had never been a woman who strapped on a bass, stepped to the front of the stage and said, "This is my band, and I am driving it." In June 1973, Can the Can hit #1 in the United Kingdom. It sold 2.5 million copies worldwide. She was 23 years old. In February 1974, Devil Gate Drive went to #1. She became only the second woman to have 2 #1 singles in UK chart history. Between 1973 and 1980, she spent 101 weeks on the British charts. She was massive in the United Kingdom, in Australia, in Europe. She was a bona fide rock star everywhere, except home. In America, radio stations did not play her singles. Critics did not review her albums. The industry that was supposed to champion a girl from Detroit looked the other way. There is no clean explanation for why. Some have argued it was gender. American rock was a boys' club, and the gatekeepers simply would not let a woman through the front door. Others have said it was the sound. Too glam for American rock radio, too hard for pop. Whatever the reason, the result was the same. The first female rock star in history could fill arenas across Europe and could not get arrested in her own country. And then came Happy Days. In 1977, Suzi Quatro was cast as Leather Tuscadero, the tough motorcycle-riding musician sister of Pinky Tuscadero, on the most popular television show in America. She appeared in 7 episodes across 1977 and 1978. The role made her face famous in the United States for the first time. Millions of Americans who had never heard Can the Can now knew Suzi Quatro as Leather Tuscadero. The show's producers loved the character. They offered her a spin-off, her own series built around leather. She turned it down. She said no because she was a musician, not an actress, and she was not going to let a television character become her identity. "If I had done a spin-off," she later said, "I would have been Leather Tuscadero for the rest of my days." She chose the music. It was the right decision, and she has never regretted it. But the irony cut deep. The one thing that made America pay attention was not her records, not her bass playing, not her leather and fury on stage. It was a sitcom role. And the sitcom role made it even harder for people to take her seriously as a rock musician. After Happy Days, some people in the industry stopped seeing her as a rock star entirely. She was Leather Tuscadero now, not the woman who had gone to #1 in a dozen countries. She was caught in a trap she had not set. In 1978, she recorded Stumblin' In with Chris Norman of Smokey, a soft, romantic duet that reached #4 on the Billboard Hot 100. It was her only American Top 40 hit. The one time America let her in, it was not for her rock. It was for a ballad, a love song, the least Suzi Quatro thing she ever recorded. She has always been ambivalent about that song. She knows it opened doors. She also knows it was not who she was. Meanwhile, on the other side of the Atlantic and the Pacific, the women she had inspired were becoming stars. Joan Jett, who had grown up staring at Suzi's poster on her bedroom wall, who had modeled her entire look after Suzi's black leather and eyeliner and shag haircut, formed the Runaways in 1975 and went on to massive solo success with I Love Rock and Roll. Chrissie Hynde formed the Pretenders. Lita Ford went solo. The Bangles, the Go-Go's, every all-female or female-fronted rock act that followed walked through a door that Suzi Quatro had kicked open. And almost none of the American press acknowledged it. Joan Jett did. She said it plainly. She was integral to me finding out who I was. Lita Ford said it with awe. All that thunder coming out of this little girl. Chrissie Hynde showed up on Suzi's This Is Your Life episode to say it in person. The women who followed her knew exactly where the path started. The industry that promoted them pretended the path had always been there. Suzi kept going. She always kept going. That is the thing about Suzi Quatro that gets lost in every summary of her career. She never stopped. She released albums through the 1980s and 1990s, even when the charts were no longer listening. She acted, not just Happy Days, but theater, television dramas, guest roles across decades. She became a radio presenter for the BBC, hosting shows on Radio 2 that ran for years. She built a life in England, the country that had embraced her when her own would not. She married twice. She raised 2 children. She wrote an autobiography called Unzipped, then a novel, then poetry. She became one of those artists whose career is so long and so varied that people forget how revolutionary the beginning was. In 2019, a documentary called Suzi Q brought it all back. For the first time, the full story was told on screen. The Detroit garage, the move to England, the #1 hits, the American silence, the women who came after. One by one they appeared on camera. Joan Jett, Lita Ford, Debbie Harry, Chrissie Hynde, Tina Weymouth, KT Tunstall, all saying the same thing. She was the first. She was the one who showed us it was possible. Watching the documentary changed Suzi herself. She had spent decades not fully understanding the scale of what she had done. I gave these women who didn't have a voice, she said afterward. I gave them permission to be different. In 2020, the Women's International Music Network gave her the Icon Award at the She Rocks Awards. In 2024, she played the main stage at Wacken, the biggest metal festival in the world, in front of 85,000 people. She was 74 years old, standing on that stage in black leather, holding the same Fender Precision her father gave her in a Detroit garage 60 years ago. The crowd roared. They knew who she was. They always had. As of today, Suzi Quatro is 75 years old and still touring. She has 28 upcoming shows across 4 countries. She is getting the best reviews of her entire career. She has published 7 books. She still plays that 1957 Fender Precision in the studio, the one she calls the Rolls-Royce of bass. She has said, with the confidence of someone who has earned every word, I will retire when I go on stage, shake my ass, and there is silence. There has never been silence. The world remembers Joan Jett. The world remembers Chrissie Hynde. The world remembers Lita Ford and Debbie Harry and the Runaways and Heart. All of them are extraordinary. All of them changed music. And all of them will tell you, if you ask, that the road started with a 5'3" girl from Detroit who picked up a bass guitar that was bigger than she was and refused to put it down. If this story changed how you see rock history, share it. Send it to someone who has never heard the name Suzi Quatro and ask them why. I will see you next week with another story from the women who burned so bright the world should have looked closer.